Good afternoon and welcome to this learning video. In Microsoft Excel, there's a very powerful function called the IF function. And what it basically is saying is, if you have a condition that you're testing, do something if the condition comes back as true, and simply do something different if it comes back false. There are no ties. Here's one example. If a salesperson has reached their quota, then give them a bonus of X number of dollars. If they haven't, just put a 0 in that bonus field. That's a simple if function. Well, you can take it a step further and have a nested if function. And I'll use a very simple example that we're probably all familiar with. When we were in school, we got tested and we got grades. And those grades were, let's say, A, B, C, D, or F. Well, you can have nested if condition that says if the student got 90 or higher, give them an A. But if they didn't, then do another test, because if they got between an 80 and 89, they got a B. And if they didn't get either of those two, then test to see if they got a 75 to a 79 to give them a C, and so forth. That's called nested if. Well, when you construct nested ifs in Excel, they can be very cumbersome, very confusing, and very laborious, because I believe you can have up to 32 nested ifs inside one if function. That's pretty brutal. So this video is going to do an alternate. It's going to introduce to you what's called the IFS function. That's IFS. It's a bit cleaner, and you'll see what I mean when we construct it here on the screen. Now, before we go through the actual IFS function example, you'll see here that this basically is a table. Technically, it's not a list. It's called a table. And the way you know that it's a table is when you're inside of it, you will see the Table Design tab. And by the way, how easy is it to convert a regular list into a table? Really easy. Control key plus the letter T as in table. And then you would click OK. See, this little window called Create Table would come up. And you will have headers, and you would click OK. So it's already a table. And when I use the ifs function here in the table, it will reference the actual column name, like loan date, rather than the cell addresses of like D8 through D13. It's a lot easier to interpret. Now, up here, I said, let's base this on a 90-day window. You can choose 30 days, 60 days, 120 days, 6 months, a year. That's up to you. I just chose 90 days. And what's going to happen is it's going to compare the loan date versus today's date right here, May 8th, 2026. Well, if the loan date is more than 90 days, put the word overdue in the status column. If it happens to be exactly 90 days, put the word due in the status column. And therefore, if it fails both of those previous tests, then put in a message in the status column that says not due. In other words, anything that's less than 90 days. So here's how it's going to start. Equal ifs, IFS, open paren. Now, I'm going to use this cell address right here in a part of the formula. So I click on the address, and I need to make it absolute, which means when I copy the formula down from row 8 all the way to the bottom of this, I don't want to do the same thing with the cell address that's in B2. I always want to refer to B2. We have to make it absolute. So I then want to subtract today's date minus the loan date. Now notice when I clicked on it, it did not say D8, the address. Instead, it gives me the column header, which makes more sense. And that happened because it's been converted to a table. Now what I want to do is I want to test it if it's greater than, I want to test it if it's greater than 90. That's the test. That's the first argument. I type in my comma to separate the argument. And when it's true, I want to have the word overdue appear right here where my cell address is in the status column. So I have to put that in double quotes, overdue, comma. Now my next test is I don't have to put the word if followed by the left paren. All I really need to do is use that cell address again, which is $B $2, and then I have to subtract the loan date and test that number equals 90. And if it is, then put the word due in the answer, comma. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. I have to put the word true as the next argument, and I'm going to explain why. This is basically the catch-all final condition, and it's the default condition. It's always true. So Excel reaches this point only if all of the previous conditions failed. So in other words, I don't have to have a whole bunch of nested ifs. All I have to have is the word true. Now, whatever follows true is similar to taking the else scenario, like you have if, then, else. So anything I put right now after this argument of true will be when it does not equal overdue or due, which means I want it to say not due. So I will type that in, double quotes. And then I have to just close the parenthesis once because I have one ifs statement. So it has to match this open paren over here. All right, when I press enter, there are my answers right there. Because it's a table, it fills them in automatically all at once. I don't have to do the autofill. That comes in really handy when there are 600 records to fill down instead of just 6 or 5, whatever. All right, so it works. How do I know it worked? Well, let's check the dates out. October 8th compared to May 8th. October 8th of last year is more than 90 days past due. So that's why it says overdue. Now these two right here, February 7th, say due because that's exactly 90 days ago. And therefore, the only other ones that are remaining, not due, which means April and March of this year, is less than 90 days in the past from May 8th, which is today. I'm a happy camper. So, again, I recommend that you start to learn how to use the ifs function rather than nesting your ifs all together. All right, now, that leads you to a whole other explanation that I could bring up regarding the VLOOKUP function. But you'll want to watch my video that I put together using the XLOOKUP function. Now, that's very powerful. But if you don't need to use that and you're just looking for simple ways of doing some ifs testing, this is a perfect example where it can help you. All right, as usual, thanks for watching. There's my email address. If you got any question at all about Microsoft Office, Copilot inside of Microsoft Office, it's tom@leadingedgebizservices.com. Oh yeah, my rates are very, very reasonable. Have a great day. Bye-bye.